Irish squad for the Six Nations 2022 has been out for a little while. There's been a few people asking, where's this video? I was kind of waiting for Andy Farrell's press conference where he gets asked, why did you bring in these guys? Where are these guys at with their injuries? And he gives an update and expectations and all the kind of insights, but nothing. There's been one from Eddie Jones for England, Wayne Pivac did one for Wales, Gregor Townsend did one for Scotland, so I was a little bit surprised, and then by the time all the Champions Cup games hit over the weekend, which went pretty well for the Irish sides largely, yeah, we got pretty full on. So here we are, a few days late, but it's a 37-man Irish squad, a couple of new faces. There's a few guys out with injuries, but we'll go over the squad quickly, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how it's looking. I don't know what Andy Farrell's thoughts are, as I said, but he's kept it kind of consistent, and that was the theme when we looked at the Irish depth chart from 2021. Consistency is kind of his thing. He's not a guy for huge kind of chopping and changing, so it will be an interesting one to see how he mixes in the new guys. When I say new, I don't just mean the two new faces, but the guys in kind of single-digit caps with some of your veterans. Hookers, you got Herring, Kelleher and Sheehan. So a couple of Leinster guys there. Kelleher seems to have kind of made the number 2 jersey his own in the last year, because I remember when he started the year, he wasn't the starting hooker. But I think as things have gone by, you know, he's getting more mature in this game, and just age-wise, 24 years old, he's, you know, stopped growing, and yeah, kind of settled well into that role. But I mean, Herring's been playing well for Ulster as your kind of 31-year-old veteran, and then Sheehan, I mean, that guy's a pretty elusive ball carrier as well, so he's kind of the ultimate guy to bring on when he's facing some tired legs. So I think you're pretty well stocked there. Props, Beelan, Furlong, Healy, Kilcoyne, O'Toole and Porter. Porter's an interesting one, given that he seems to be able to kind of swap sides at his leisure now. He's proved himself to be pretty bloody capable either side of the scrum, which is kind of an invaluable thing, especially when you're looking at Rugby World Cup squads. If you've got that one prop who can go either side of the scrum, it's potentially one less body you have to take, or one less player to fly over if that kind of injuries occur. I mean, Furlong, everyone knows what he's about. He's just legit one of the best players in the world. So yeah, it's tough on guys like Beelan to kind of get game time when you are kind of behind a guy like that. But also props wise, I think you guys are pretty well stocked. I hope Andy kind of spreads the minutes around and doesn't just kind of rely on the old hands, but you got a Six Nations to win, so it's always the balancing act. Locks, likewise, I think you're fairly well stocked. I'm kind of sounding like a broken record here. Baird, Byrne, that's if Byrne is a lock. He could be a Lucy equally as well. Henderson, Ryan and Treadwell. I'm pretty pleased for Treadwell on the squad. You know, he's only got 3 caps for Ireland. He's 26 years old. It's hard though, because if you play Treadwell, who do you not play, right? Like, I mean, Henderson couldn't even get any game time in the Lions test matches, which kind of says a lot. Tyke Byrne, I'm a huge fan of in terms of his ability to pinch ball, whether he's in the second row or whether he's in the back row. But yeah, Ryan Baird's only 22 years old. He's kind of a guy that needs more game time. James Ryan's somehow copping a bit of stick in the last year or so for not kind of living up to the heights of 2018, but I still think he's, you know, continuing with that kind of high work rate that we are used to. So yeah, you guys are pretty well stocked in the second row as well. The guy who is missing is Alton Delan, but I think he's off to France at the end of the season, so it's kind of no surprise that he is not selected in the squad. And I think Ian Henderson's still got an ankle worry, so he's still in the squad, but he's not been playing in recent weeks, so it might be a step back for him in terms of getting a starting spot, if he's kind of got to prove his fitness in the first instance. Back rowers, you got Conan, Coombs, Doris, Omani, Timony and Van der Fleer. And I like the Irish back row as well, man. Omani is a guy who gets a bit of stick in terms of his age. He's 32, so he's easily got a World Cup in him if that's the plan. And I don't think there's anyone as good in the air as him. He's also a good leader around the park, and he's still got gas in the tank. So him and Sexton are seemingly the kind of two targets in terms of just being old. But I mean, 32. Richie McCaw was older than that when he went to World Cup. Same with Dan Carter. So 32 is still, that's still fine. Timony, I've loved his work rate for Ulster as well, but he's got a job to get into the side when Van der Fleer's there as well. And Van der Fleer, at least in the last few weeks that I've seen him for Leinster, has just been loving getting into some space. I know Leinster have dished out a couple of proper hidings in the Champions Cup, so it's hard to read too much into that. But when I think Josh Van der Fleer, I'm thinking, sprinting out of the line, making the opposition fly halves' lives miserable, closing down that space, getting in a million tackles and getting over the ball and whatnot. But ball in hand, he's been kind of, taking a step up, at least for Leinster in the last few games. Speaking of ball in hand, Gavin Coombs is another guy for Munster. He's been a monster of a ball carrier, but then you got Conan as well. So this is what I'm talking about when I say it's a hard decision as to who to give the minutes to, because Coombs certainly needs some time at test level, but Conan, he's 29, he's at the peak of his powers as well. So yeah, good problem to have if you're Andy Farrell. The backs, you got Casey, Gibson, Park and Murray as your scrum halves. Casey is one that he's only got 4 caps, but he's looked sharp for Munster. He's not the finished product by any means. He still needs to develop his game a little bit and I guess boss the pack around a bit more, but that's the kind of thing that comes with experience, and he is still a very young man. Gibson Park, though, seems to be the established guy at the moment, based on the way Andy Farrell wants to play the game. Kind of just that ripping, relentless, high-intensity game. Gibson Park seems to have, slotted in absolutely perfectly, at least at the end of last year. I mean, the fact that you've still got Cooney who's out, I mean, whether he would have been in the squad, probably not, based on recent selections anyway, but he's got a calf injury. You've got Blade, who's been tearing it up for Connacht. You've got Doak, also for Ulster, who's, again, probably still a bit too fresh. He's only just kind of doing the thing for Ulster, so he needs to get a bit more game time under his belt. But I think that's one area where you've got loads of guys to pick from. I mean, McGrath's there as well if you need him. I haven't even mentioned Murray, who is actually in the squad. So, whatever kind of game Farrell wants to play, he can pick the right guys for the job. I would have thought if he wants to play that kind of real high-intensity game, start Gibson Park and bring Casey off the bench, but it maybe is a nice option to have Murray with a bit more of the old box kicking and game control if he wants to kind of close out games. But we'll see. 10s, you got Cardi, Carberry and Sexton. Sexton is captain. Harry Byrne is the guy who is out of the squad. I can't remember if he was injured. I know he was in the squad at the end of last year. This is where I need Andy Farrell's interview to tell me why the changes. Carberry has been out injured for a while, so his selection was maybe a touch surprising, but I guess he's kind of close enough to full fitness that they are happy to bring him back. And in terms of just form, Jack Carty has been in cracking form for Connacht, so it's pleasing to see that a guy, if he plays well enough, can play his way back into the squad when he was kind of seemingly on the outer. But that being said, Sexton's captain, so he should be getting the majority of the starts. It's another problem. Not a problem in a bad way, it's a problem in a good way for Andy Farrell. Who do you play? Sexton, in terms of his form for Leinster, again, the last couple of weeks have been lopsided matches, but he's looked good. I think one game off the bench, one start. If he can keep fit, 36 years old, he's still got that kind of leadership and that game control in him. Midfielders, Aki, Henshaw, Hume, Ringrose. You're missing McCloskey, who's, I think, also got an ankle injury. Kieran Frawley is another guy who's just seemingly out selection-wise. I think Henshaw is a guy who's back in, so that kind of makes sense. But yeah, there's a couple of Leinstermen with Henshaw and Ringrose who've got a pretty good partnership together. Aki always adds a bit of physical presence when he's in the squad. So, and Hume, he's only got one cap, but for Ulster, he's another one who's just in cracking form. So, what area of this team is it really kind of, looking thin on depth? Don't know. It looks pretty deep. This team should should be able to put in some good performances in the Six Nations. But yeah, we'll see. Outside backs, Balakoon, Conway, Earls, Hansen, Keenan, Lowry, and Lama. It's actually Lama, then Lowry. So that's where you finally get a couple of new faces. Lowry at fullback, and then Mac Hansen on the wing. Remember, James Lowe, he's got a muscle injury he sustained in training. So he's not in the picture, which maybe opened the door for Mac Hansen, who has been in electric form for Connacht with those kind of quick steps of his. He's very much a kind of all-attack player, so it depends. Defensively he's all right, but I think the same has been said for James Lowe, right, that he's kind of very good going forward. Hansen probably doesn't have the big boot that Lowe's got, but I guess you can't just compare them with that straight comparison. Mac Hansen's in the team to bring his own game. Keenan at fullback has been ever present, and someone else needs to get some game time. If you saw the depth chart video, Hugo Keenan played more minutes for his team in terms of the percentage than any other guy. Like, he played 96% of all the minutes at fullback for Ireland last year, which is bonkers. Someone else needs to get some game time. Lowry, since getting named in the squad, had a pretty good shift for Ulster at the Champions Cup at the weekend. There's the criticisms of him being too small. That comes with any player who's about his size. I mean, Colby was told he was too small. I saw Jalibert on Twitter saying he was told he was too thin and whatnot. So in the past, if you're good enough, your size doesn't really matter. So he seems good enough, man. He's a very elusive runner, and he's stronger than he looks. So I do hope to see him at fullback, maybe against Italy, but we'll kind of see how he goes in training and if he can impress the boss. Balakoon's been in cracking form, pleased for him. But then also Conway's there. He's one of my favourites. If you guys follow the channel, you know I'm a big fan of Andrew Conway. The fact that he's only got 27 caps and he's 30 years old is kind of a bit of a travesty, but sometimes it's hard when other guys like Keith Earls have been in the team for years. He's cracking on to 100 caps, and he seems to have kind of found a spot on the bench as that outside back and midfield cover. And then Lama is there as well, potentially covering wing and fullback. So we'll see. There's no Stockdale. He's had an ankle injury. There's no Zebo. He was just not selected. So, yeah. It will be nice to see if some of the single-digit cap guys, like I think of Balakoon in terms of his form, he could definitely use a start in a big game to kind of see what he's about. But as I also said, Andy Farrell wants to win now. So it's that balance, man. Average age of the squad is 27, just over 27 years old, which is, I think, a touch higher than the other squads, but not a heck of a lot. I think the English were about 25 and the other squads were about 26. And the average number of caps is almost 31, so again, a little bit higher than some of the other squads. So maybe that also leads to a bit of a win now mentality. But yeah, I think the Irish squad, it does look pretty tidy. It's not one that you can look at, and I don't think there's really any kind of obvious weak spots in the side. Obviously, if you had like Porter and Furlong go down, your scrum's not quite looking as ominous, but I still think they've got depth there that can back up if needed. If you had some of the experienced outside backs go down, then you are looking at playing some relatively young guys. But I mean, Keenan hasn't got that many caps to his name, but he's just taken to international rugby like a duck to water. So, yeah, I'll be curious to see how things line up. I hope Cardi gets some game time in terms of the form he's been in. It's richly deserved, but as Sexton is captain, you're kind of obliged to start him. And likewise, I'll be curious to see if it is indeed Gibson Park who gets the starts with Casey or Murray potentially on the bench. I didn't even mention Caelan Doris, man. That guy's been phenomenal as well. So, I mean, whatever back row they set up, it's going to look pretty nice. As I said, I would like to see Timony get a game, but with the form Van der Fleer's in, it's tough, man. Good problems to have. Like I say, it's the sign of a pretty bloody good side. But yeah, Andy Farrell's been in charge for a wee while now, so it's time for him to win. I reckon he's probably in a kind of similar position to Gaultier in France. That yeah, maybe now is the time if they can get a Six Nations under their belt. I think psychologically that would do the side pretty well, but maybe they don't need it quite as much as France because they've had it more recently than France have. But it certainly do Andy Farrell a bit of a boost to his kind of coaching reputation. But anyway, I've gone on too long. You guys let me know your thoughts on the squad. Do you reckon there's any spots that are looking particularly concerning? Are there any guys that you are a bit disappointed didn't get into the squad? It is pretty competitive in many positions, but yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. If you guys want British and Irish Lions gear, the British and Irish Lions shop is flogging off the rest of their stock from the tour in 2021. So check out the link in the description. As I said, they're basically putting on a big sale to try and get rid of it all. So if you are keen, have a wee look. Otherwise, take care, guys. I'll talk to you soon.